are thrilled to have you here for this really interesting discussion about local control. Welcome to the Fall Kickoff. This is the first of our events for this year for the League of Women Voters of the Austin area. And we've got a great program for you today. I'm going to turn it over to Carol Eppelkamp to lead that discussion, and then I'll be back at the end to talk to you about what we have planned for the rest of the year and where we're going from here. One quick thing, you all have this lovely bingo sheet that was in your seat. Please feel free to play along with us. Put your name on the sheet. That's an important step. Put your name on the sheet. And then turn it in at the back of the room to the lovely ladies gesticulating wildly at the basket in their hands right now. And at the end, we'll do a drawing for some prizes. So thank you again for coming, and I will turn it over to Carol. Carol, there you go.
Thank you very much. My name is Carol Eppelkamp. I am with this Austin League, and my role, I have a timer so we can get started. Apparently I've been with the league 10 years because I have a ribbon. Yay. And my role is the candidate forum, chair the candidate forums and the candidate debates. And I've done this for a number of years with all of you, many of you out in the audience. I am thrilled to talk a little bit about local control and our fight for local control and how the 88th legislative session is going to affect our area. Okay? What is local control? Okay, y'all been here, y'all heard a little bit about this. We're going to unpack a lot of this. It's the term we use to describe the legal powers of the local governments, for example, the cities and counties, and to create regulations. I just quietly think about what exactly is local control. Texas Monthly, back in 2017, and other cities around the state put in a ban on non-reusable grocery bags. It was called the bag ban, okay? Someone took it to the court, and it was struck down. And here is what Texas Monthly did, a survey with the University of Texas. And this is kind of what they found. We kind of got it all in one little paragraph. And the principal local control appears to have little gravity with voters beyond an abstract appeal that is easily overruled by the more powerful dispositions in the universe of political attitudes. That would be partisanship, ideology, and material interest. And they found in this survey that basically about a third was okay with someone preempting local control, a little over a third was not okay with it, and about a third didn't have an opinion. And so it was, they found that as voters, they interviewed the voters, it was kind of like this. So we're going to unpack kind of what that says. So what we're going to explore, we're going to kind of talk about what changed with local control in the session, what's happening with the law in the courts, and what the real effects are for those of us sitting in this room in the Austin area. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have with us a true subject matter expert and a person that's actually passionate about education. And Ryan Turner, he is the executive director at the Texas Municipal Court's Education Center. How many of you have never heard of the Texas Municipal Court's Education Center? Raise your hand. Okay, perfect. I wanted you to know you guys are in great company. Okay? He and I had a long discussion about this, but he's also a substitute judge on the Austin Municipal Court. Now, he received his law license in 1998, and he is an esteemed alumni of the Southern Methodist University, where he got his JD. He also has a bachelor's degree in psychology with the highest honors from St. Edward's University. I'm sure that helps as a lawyer.
Yes, absolutely does. No toppers.
And after law school, he served as a briefing attorney for Judge Ryan Kellus at the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. All right, in 2019, Judge Turner was appointed to the Supreme Court of Texas and Court of Criminal Appeals to serve on the Legislative Research Committee of the Judicial Commission on Mental Health. In 2023, he chaired the Texas Judicial Council's work group that drafted HB 3186, the Texas Youth Diversion and Early Intervention Act. I tell you this because I really want you to know a little bit about the background of our subject matter expert. Here's what sorry, I forgot to show them you.
Hi, pardon.
On this slide. But he is a passionate educator. And I'm going to go ahead and come over this way because we're going to dive right in here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this. What we're talking about is House Bill 2127, all right? And when I say House Bill 2127, everybody goes, what is that, Carol? And then I say, oh, that's the Texas Regulatory Consistency Act. How many of you know what the Texas Regulatory Consistency Act is? Raise your hand, you got it, okay? I want you to make sure you're comfortable, okay? Because if I say the Death Star Bill, how many of you have heard the word Death Star Bill? Okay, he's gonna unpack that one for us too. All right, so HB 2127, guys, it really specifically governs the code under Texas agriculture, business and commerce, finance, insurance, labor, natural resources, occupations, and property codes. And I privately just want to ask, Ryan, what else is left? Okay, they just had a big list, okay? But if a city ordinance pertains to any practice or issue that is also governed by these state codes, the state law takes precedent over the local laws or preempts local laws. Preemption, new vocabulary word, we're going to talk about it today. He's going to unpack that a little bit for us. So diving right in here, on August 30th, Judge Maya Gamble of the 459th District Court in Travis County declared this bill, House Bill 2127, unconstitutional. All right, we're going to unpack this and learn about how this law could affect us. So, Judge Turner, in your role as the Executive Director of the Texas Municipal Court Education Center, working with 867 municipalities across Texas, and having just completed a little statewide jaunt, okay, across the state discussing with over 1,000 court personnel about HB 2127, what do you see as the major concern if this bill is found constitutional and stands as law?
All right. Wrong color.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. It's a little daunting. I have a gigantic head, myself floating behind me over my left shoulder. But no, thank you very much. So no, it's been a fantastic summer. We just got through TMCEC. Every 2 years does a legislative update. We travel through the plains of the state of Texas. We typically talk about 100. So we summarize typically around 200 pieces of legislation. We discuss, in a one-day event, typically we discuss 80 to 85 bills. And this was, without a doubt, the bill that people wanted to talk about the most. And I don't know if it's because it hit close to home or because of the amount of media coverage it received. But let's go ahead and first of all just talk about the name, the Death Star bill. So I just want to say that, first of all, how many Star Wars fans do we have in the room? If you are a Star Wars, okay, well, that's great. Who says you can't bring America together? All right, so if you're a Star Wars fan, then I'm going to go ahead and start off with a little Star Wars specific lingo for you. We at TMCEC thought it was unfair to call this thing the Death Star bill. Okay, because if you really wanted to be Star Wars specific, you might want to call it the Empire Strikes Back bill. And then it really depends on who you think is the empire. Because in a state as complicated and as diverse as Texas, you have people who look at the world in different ways. So I had people in my office who said it should be called the Empire Strikes Back bill. I had someone else who told me they said it should really be called the Return of the Jedi bill. And it all, I think at the end of the day, I was convinced it all depends on who you think is the Rogue One. Okay, so that concludes my Star Wars references for at least the next 5 to 10 minutes. But to answer your question about what is the major concern? The major concern in the bill, if it is allowed to stand, is how do you apply it? Okay, the questions that remain is we've never seen anything like this, and the issues will be if it's found to be constitutional is what will Texas look like when we begin applying this piece of legislation? I will tell you that one of the things that, as someone who's done a lot of teaching, who's done college teaching, who's spent a lot of time talking to adults and doing adult education and continuing education, is that when you talk about preemption, this is not a sexy topic, but it is kind of a subject that has always been there. And my first impression of the bill was that it's just a field preemption bill, and that the way we normally do things in Texas is we have an ordinance that will pass or a regulation. Someone files a lawsuit. We spend 3 to 10 years tied up in litigation, and then at the end of 3 to 10 years, we find out if it's constitutional or not. And taxpayers end up flipping the dime for a lot of lawyer fees. And that maybe this thing wasn't all bad, because in theory, you're supposed to be able to tell what you're getting from the get-go. We're going to know that certain things are out of bounds and that they're clearly preempted. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, because I know we're going to talk about what that actually means.
All right, go. Next question. Can you explain what preemption means, especially in relation to how this law would work?
Sure. Of course, none of these questions were pre-planned, ladies. I don't want you to think that I see any of the questions that are written down on the piece of paper in front of me. But let me just start off with this. Preemption is a little complicated, but it's not so complicated that I can't explain it to you like I've explained it to hundreds of judges and young lawyers and college students for the last 20 years. Preemption refers to the idea that a higher authority of law will displace the law of a lower authority of law when the two authorities come into conflict. Okay, that's what it is in its simplest terms. Once again, we're talking about when you have a conflict and you have different sources of law where the high authority of law will displace the law of a lower authority of law when the two authorities come into conflict. And most of the time, historically, the application that I think y'all are familiar with is when we're talking about state legislation and how it interacts with federal law. And so one of the things that makes this issue different and novel is that, first of all, the federal Constitution has a supremacy clause, and we know that things that are generally not spoken to by the federal government are within the bailiwick of the states under the 10th Amendment. All right? And I was telling, when she and I were visiting, I was saying, okay, one of the things, obviously, as a judge, is, no matter how this dispute resolves itself, as a lawyer and as a judge, I've taken an oath to uphold the laws, and I'm bound to follow the case law and the precedent set. So I really am trying to approach this kind of like on the one hand, on the other hand. That's what I want to do during our conversation today. I really want y'all to understand the opposing viewpoints. I'm not here to choose a side. I'm here to kind of lay out so you can see what the real issues are. So one of the things that I think the municipalities would want you to know, though, is that there is no supremacy clause in the Texas Constitution. That the Texas Constitution is different. That we really have a situation where it contains a primacy clause. And that this whole idea of home rule municipalities and home rule entities, you have to understand that. Someone who would try to grossly oversimplify the thing would just say, well, hey, look, we all know the diagram, right? It's like the federal government is bigger than the states, and the states are bigger than the counties, and the counties are bigger than the cities. But any of you who are students of Texas government probably know that municipalities have a lot more legal authority than our counties do. Okay? The county authorities are much more limited. And when you're talking about municipalities and the powers that they have, they become increasingly complicated when we start talking about the distinction between a general law municipality and a home rule municipality. So let me just go ahead and lay that out now, because I think that y'all need to understand what that is about. So, in a nutshell, if I were to explain this to someone and I had 60 seconds in an elevator to break this thing down, this is how I would explain it to them. I would say that the Texas Constitution states that there are general laws that all cities and all counties are obligated to follow, and that they're all authorized to function within. But then, when you're talking about a home rule municipality, and this is specific, this is contained in, let me not mess this one up, for those of you who really want the numbers, we're talking about Texas Constitution, Article 11, Section 5. What it tells us is that a municipality that has at least 5,000 people that decides to adopt a charter that if the people of that municipality adopt a charter, that the powers of that city shall not come solely from the general laws of the state of Texas, but rather the powers vested in the Texas Constitution go straight to that city's charter, allowing them more say in local government. Okay? Now, how many of you grew up in a town of less than 5,000 people? We have to have some people in here. Okay, so if you grew up in a town of less than 5,000 people, that's generally what's referred to as a general law municipality. And 85% of the cities in the state of Texas have a population of less than 5,000 people. So let me ask you, how much do you think those people in those towns are really going to care about this issue? I don't know, but I'm just telling you, I'm not saying they don't care, because I did. I've spoken to folks from all different sizes of municipalities, but obviously, if you are from a home rule city that has adopted that charter, that has become accustomed to getting the authority to pass ordinances straight from the Texas Constitution, this is viewed as a substantial mitigation and a substantial reduction in historic powers. One more thing before we move on. So I want to talk to you about the history of the Texas Constitution. I know y'all think that is totally sexy and exciting because it is. Okay, so in 1876, the Texas Constitution did not contemplate home rule status. And what happened was that from 1876 until the early 1900s, the Texas legislature was spending an absurd amount of time having to make decisions during session that only affected, guess, which city? Houston, Texas, okay? Houston, Texas. The people from rural Texas, they said, we're not from Houston, Texas. We're from Texas. We're not from Houston, Texas. Time's ticking. Y'all know how session works. You know how many days it lasts. And so at the end, the whole genesis of the home rule municipality constitutional amendment was that we can get more stuff done during session if we will allow home rule municipalities to have this grant of power, and that will allow the Texas legislature to be more effective. So in 1912, the people of the state of Texas adopted a constitutional amendment authorizing home rule status. Okay? And so that really is kind of functioning in the background of this, because the critics of the legislation will tell you that, and the judge agreed, this is unconstitutional on its face because of what the people of Texas determined in 1912. And having read the pleadings of the plaintiffs in this case, what they said in their motion for summary judgment is, if you wanted to do this, you needed to change the Constitution of the state of Texas and you needed to put it on the ballot. And you didn't do that. And so in the first round of litigation, the judge has agreed. But as you know, that's only the first round of litigation. It's now pending before the Third Court of Appeals.
Okay, so y'all hear me? Okay. So let me see if I can unpack that. We have a constitutional amendment that gave the home rule to the cities, those that are over 5,000.
And that have had an election and that have adopted a city charter.
Okay. So then now this 88th legislative session came up and decided to not even consider this a constitutional amendment, just to make this act called the Texas Regulatory Consistency Act. So they put this bill forth,
yes,
but it really requires, it may require a constitutional amendment to do what they think they want it to do.
Depending on the trajectory of the litigation, if they come up short, if the people who filed this bill and the people who support this legislation prevail, then there won't need to be a constitutional amendment, because that's going to be the determination that ultimately the Texas Supreme Court is going to make. Okay. However, if the Supreme Court decides either to not take the case, which could happen, or because of the fact that I don't know, I guess if the issue continues, by the way, I think this thing could go on for 5 to 10 years. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing bounce around, and it could be in the court system for a long time. But I think that having read the filings of the plaintiffs, their perspective is that if you wanted to do this, the right way to do this was to get 2/3 of each chamber of the Texas legislature to support a constitutional amendment, and then to let the people of the state of Texas decide.
Okay,
Yes.
that clarifies it,
Yes.
because it, in our next question, it was kind of giving an overview of the act, but also why did Judge Gamble find it unconstitutional? Because that kind of gets to the crux of what you just said.
Okay, well, first of all, let me say this. If you look at the pleadings in this case, they're substantial. Most of them are 45 to 60 pages.
Well, we're probably not going to do that.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But I want to talk to you about an exception to that, which was that the judgment that was signed by the trial court judge is 2 pages long. And the only thing that the judge says is that after hearing the oral arguments and a motion in regard to a motion of summary judgment, that she finds the entire piece of legislation to be unconstitutional facially, and she bases this off of Article 11, Section 5, which is what I've already spoken to you about. It's the Home Rule Constitutional Amendment that was passed in 1912. And then, for those of you who are really wonky nerds about legislation, you need to know, if you're ever writing a bill, make sure you have a savings clause, typically at the bottom of your ordinance or at the bottom of your legislation. This one did not have one. So in absence of a savings clause, her legal conclusion was she had no choice but to find the entire act unconstitutional. So that concludes Act 1 of the play, right there.
Okay, so a savings clause.
Right.
So you were the author of that bill, and let's go back to the legislative session, and you're sitting in the room. What would it say? What would it need to say on the bottom to make this a moot?
Absolutely. So as someone who has worked as a county attorney and as a city attorney, who's drafted many ordinances, who, by the way, we'll be working on a skate park ordinance tomorrow afternoon. Just want to let you know what my Sunday's going to look like. You typically have at the bottom of an ordinance a provision that says that if any court finds any section of this ordinance, bill, regulation to be unconstitutional, that the remaining provisions that are not found to be unconstitutional shall survive. It's like a survivor's. It's like the right of survivorship in a piece of legislation. That, in other words, you would say that this one specific part would be knocked out, but the rest would be allowed to continue. Her legal analysis, she concluded there was no savings clause. And like I said, facially means on its face, not just as applied to any one city. It's on its face. The entire thing is found to be unconstitutional under Article 11, Section 5.
So if what I'm hearing you say, because there wasn't a savings clause in there, had there been a savings clause and somebody went and it was something to do with the labor code or water breaks, and they said that part of the law is found unconstitutional, a judge determines that means that everything else in the law would stay.
Maybe. But she also said she found the entire document, the entire bill to be facially unconstitutional on its face, based off of the arguments that have been made by the city. So specifically, we had the city of Houston, and then we had the city of San Antonio also get involved in the litigation. So I'm not saying that it would have changed the judge's final analysis. The judge got to hear everyone's arguments. And one of the things that I will tell you is someone who has approached this neutrally, is that preemption is nothing new. I mean, it's nothing new. There are different types of preemption that we've dealt with since the beginning of American history, and the tension that we've always had between our federal government and our state governments. And so, you get into these 3 different types of them. You've got, and let me just break them down for you quickly, because I do think it's valuable. First of all, if there's an outright conflict. Okay, an outright conflict is when an ordinance directly opposes state law. All right, that is one area where preemption comes to the surface. The second one is called an express preemption, and an express preemption is when the state law directly opposes a local power. And then the third one is an implied preemption, and this typically occurs when one of 3 things happens. Okay, first, when a local ordinance prohibits an act that is permitted by the state legislature, or secondly, when a local ordinance permits an act that is prohibited by the state legislature, or third, when there is clear legislative intent that the entire field is preempted. So the state's prerogative on this is we are announcing to every home rule municipality in the state of Texas that we have identified 7 codes. Okay, and by the way, I think you named them, but let's go ahead and name them one more time. Okay, so specifically we're talking about the agriculture code, the business and commerce code, okay, we're talking about the insurance code, we're talking about the labor code, we're talking about the natural resource code, and we're talking about the occupations code. Now, for those of you, how many of you have had any reason to ever put your hands on Vernon's annotated statutes? How many of you have seen these codes? So each of these codes is like a book in and of itself. Okay, we're talking about, thousands of pages, and just to say it's, we're claiming dibs on this, it's out of bounds. Okay, begs a lot of other questions, because to answer your question, that is 7, and I looked this up just for you all this morning. There are 28 codes of state legislation. So if you want to know what's left, and the answer is there's a lot that's left. But the legislature, I'll just give you an example. Can you imagine if you were to drive from one Texas city to another Texas city, and when you got there, all of a sudden you were not expected to drive on the right side of the road, but the home rule municipality has decided that you will drive on the left side of the road except on Wednesdays. Okay, the Texas Transportation Code clearly addresses this issue. Okay, and I will tell you, y'all remember red light cameras? Remember all the fun the state of Texas had over red light cameras? You remember the local effort here in Austin to regulate Uber and Lyft? Y'all remember that? We know that when it comes to things like the transportation code, that there are general issues that are spoken to by the state of Texas, and there is a darn good reason why we all drive on the right-hand side of the road. And there are limits, okay? There are limits that, even if you don't like this bill, you have to appreciate the limits of local control, and you should also appreciate the limits of state control, because it's really a balance. The disagreement here really is in the eyes of the viewer. It depends on, what lens you're looking at this through. Because I will tell you, from the prerogative of the people who wanted this bill to become the law, they view the state of Texas, particularly the home rule municipalities, as a patchwork of regulatory bureaucracies that hinder the ability of many people to get things done. And those people think that that is their paramount value. That if you want to build, if you want to build a bunch of Buc-ee's throughout the state of Texas, and you have worked with your architect, and you know what building materials you want to use, you should not have to deal with 15% of the cities that have each adopted their own standards for building. Because it's true. Some cities will require you to, I think this has already been addressed in past sessions about building materials, but they'll tell you you're not allowed to use brick. You must use limestone. The limestone must consist of these colors. They cannot be any larger than this. You're not allowed to use hardy plank. You must use hardy plank. You must use the most green technologies possible. These are the types of inconsistencies that really triggered a lot of the folks that wanted to see this type of legislation come forward. But then you try to balance it. The one thing I did not understand, because as someone who is a little bit jaundiced about my chosen profession and about lawyers generally, I was like, oh, this is a real blow to lawyers, because lawyers get paid millions of dollars a year to litigate this, and there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that we won't need to litigate. We're just going to know it's clearly out of bounds. However, I was mistaken about that, because the real issues are that because you're just saying that these codes are out of bounds, you're not saying what parts within those codes are out of bounds, and you've now shifted the burden onto the local municipalities to try to figure out what they can or cannot do, because it says that under this law, a municipality is prohibited to adopt, enforce, or maintain any ordinance in contravention of the legislation. And then it talks about these enumerated 7 statutes, but it doesn't really go beyond that. So you can't do it, but you aren't really being told what you can't do. So one of the things that the plaintiffs are arguing in this case, which really is interesting, is that typically void for vagueness type of arguments, which are rooted in the 14th Amendment and have to do with due process. Normally, those will be brought up like in criminal cases are the ones I'm most familiar with. If I tell you that something's illegal, but I don't provide enough detail for you as a reasonable person to understand what you cannot do, they're now making a similar argument stating this is also unconstitutionally vague. If you wanted to go back through every one of those codes, and every single time there was something that you did not want a municipality to be able to do, you should have done that. But you didn't, because Texas has been around since 1845. And some of these ordinances have been around since 1912. And the amount of time, so this is what one commentator described as a shotgun approach to state preemption. And from the perspective of the plaintiffs, field preemption is not consistent with the state constitution. In Texas, we knew what we were doing in 1912. And that every one of us who are alive today have been alive under that realization that in a state as vast and as large as Texas, that you have to have the ability for local control, for local decisions to be made. Because at the end of the day, it's not about government. In fact, this is actually a very libertarian and true Texas spirit type of argument. The power belongs to the people, not to the city government, not to the state government, not to the county government. It belongs to the people, and the people have voted. So that's kind of the spin that we would have. But the vagueness argument and the issues about how do you apply it, that actually is going to be great for my brethren and my profession. Because here's the new millions of dollars we're going to make. I was even thinking about it the other day. Maybe this will be my next chapter in my professional career. Because I'm telling you, there are going to be millions of dollars. If this becomes the law, there will be millions of dollars to be earned in the legal profession, trying to defend municipalities or sue municipalities. And I guess, I know Bruce is back there, so I should say counties as well. But we know, for the most part, we're really talking about home rule municipalities is what we're really talking about.
All right, so there's some hot topics.
Absolutely.
This is kind of been in the headlines, and if you just, all you have to do is go to your favorite search engine, DuckDuckGo, and they will, don't even start me on the Google, okay? But you will go and just search for the Death Star bill, the preemption, and you'll find a lot of things. But some of you may have been involved on the advocacy side for some of the evictions and the rules that were applied right after during the pandemic. So there's one example that I want to ask him would this bill have prohibited these local rules? Because what happened was, during the pandemic and under Supreme Court guidance, there was some guidance across the state, but local jurisdictions passed various tenant protections, such as a moratorium on evictions and the requirement that rental assistance be pursued before one was to be evicted, and also for rental assistance. Ryan, would this bill have prohibited those local rules?
Okay, so first of all, I guess I should say as a judge that I'm going to qualify my comments, okay? Because without having studied the specific content, this is the problem with the entire law, according to the plaintiffs, is that the only thing you're telling me is that these codes are out of bounds, okay? That's all you're telling me. And it would be nice to think that things only live within the parameter of certain codes, but I'm here to tell you, there's plenty of things that have to do with, like for instance, let's say maintaining a nuisance. We'll use that, like a criminal nuisance. That may exist in state law, but it could also exist in city law. And you sometimes will have issues that jump between codes. So it's not always like you're going to find all the answers you want to know about occupations within the occupations code. Sometimes you will find that there are certain things having to do with your occupation that are in another code. But specifically about this is just very elementary analysis. I remember enough from passing the Texas bar exam in the late 1990s to tell you that the provisions pertaining to eviction are contained in the Texas Property Code. Okay? And I can tell you that this bill specifically names the Property Code as one of them.
So the answer would be if Austin, Texas...
Ostensibly, yes. But see, that's the issue again. The city, and once again, I'm going to have to pull Bruce into this. Bruce has been involved in having to handle eviction. That is the property code, right? It's all in the property code. So we go back to the fact that this law says that a local government may not enact an ordinance, rule, or regulation in contradiction of state law, and then they enumerate these codes. Just using a very, very elemental analysis, you would think that if evictions are in the property code, that's it. Hands off. No regulations, no additional rules. What's true in Tyler will be true in Austin. What's true in Austin will be true in Vernon, Texas. And the proponents of this legislation says that that's exactly how it should be. What's true in one city should be true in another city. That these cities are not countries. These cities are not states unto themselves. That people should be able to travel from region to region, locality to locality, with some reasonable assurances of what the ground rules are. So
It's got some good parts on one side, it's got some good parts on the other side, the opponents. Does anyone in the audience have a question on a topic that we have not touched on that you'd like to get our subject matter expert on? Does anybody
Please do not call me the subject matter. Please.
We all agree.
How about the person who Jessica Foreman asked to come do this because she's about to have a baby and she's a friend? That's who I am, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jessica's friend. And I'll be your friend too, depending on your question.
All right, so go ahead. Can you stand up? And I think we can hear you, but I'll repeat the question.
My question I had was regarding the bill that got passed for removing district attorneys and county attorneys from office. The attorney general has the ability to possibly do that. So I had a hard time understanding how can that happen if we, the voters, voted in that district attorney or county attorney in the state who claims they don't want to involve government or Big Brother or whatever is clearly an overreach.
Well, I can answer that. I mean, I can tell you that, I'll teach y'all a word that you could quickly forget or that you'll regret you've ever heard. It's called quo warranto, is the answer to it. And then quo warranto proceedings are used to remove public officials all the time. Incompetency, intoxication are the two historic grounds. And so having a state law that allows for the removal of elected officials, that is not anything new, okay? Probably what's more new is having prosecutors that are making blanket statements about what type of laws they're not going to enforce. And that's what the proponents of that specific piece of legislation, I'm committed to the concept of individual justice in individual cases. I do not think it serves anyone's interest typically to be making huge telegraphing remarks about what you will or will not do without regard to the circumstances. But to answer your question, that specific legislation is kind of closely associated to things that probably most elected county officials hopefully were taught. Bruce, you know about quo warranto proceedings for elected officials? Okay, so we've always had the ability to do it. This type of bill is just a little more saucy. It's got just a little more of the political dynamic of modern times splashed into it. But it's really probably not that different than things that we've seen in the past.
Anyone else here at the table?
I don't know if this may be a rhetorical question, so I'll just make that. You can put me in the saucy side of the soup. Right, Texas is, in the 27 years I've been here, has been very outspoken about the federal government not being able to dictate to the state what they can and can't do. And now the state is taking great glee, right, in saying that cities shouldn't be able to have the power to do what they want to do. And I'm just curious, and this is I'm interested in your take on it. I know you can't answer it.
I really appreciate you saying that in advance. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll roll with it.
Okay. It's like, how are the legislators who voted to put this in place, squaring what they don't want versus now what they're placing down? It is nonsensical to me.
Okay, I mean, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
I mean, as someone who has a lot of Republican and a lot of Democrat friends and a lot of independent people who are increasingly fed up with the Republicans and the Democrats, let me just tell you that I think that I believe that what you would hear, particularly from the governor's office, okay, is that when we talk about the balance of power between the federal government and the state, that there are geopolitical subsets, and that a municipality or a utility district or a county is a geopolitical subset of the state. They do not believe that the same analysis that comes into the battle. Like, for instance, one of the things I will tell you that I think is comical, but I've got a kind of a perverse sense of humor, is that the same case law that's going to be argued in this case will be argued one way by the plaintiffs as they challenge this legislation, and will also be cited and argued by the state of Texas in federal court as they dispute the the state's actions down on the border. Now that should just tell you that we all sign up to play our parts in life, and let's not take this too personally or be too mean-spirited. Hate the game, not the player. All right, but I will just tell you, I think it's going to be very interesting if you watch how this is going to play out. You're going to see a preemption battle between home rule municipalities and the state of Texas, while there's simultaneously a preemption battle between the state of Texas and the federal government about whether you can put buoys in the Rio Grande. Okay, so it's very interesting to see how that's going to play out. Great question.
All right, we have one more in the back of the room, and then we're going to go to some table activities. Joyce?
Let's say that this law is found constitutional.
So it is found constitutional, okay?
And it goes into effect. Could we theoretically sue if you were in a county that tried to regulate travel on county roads? Can you theoretically sue to negate that law?
Okay, well let me.
We don't regulate travel
No.
right now.
No, and that's not in the scope of this. So let me, one of the things that you had asked that we need to make clear, let me just tell you the ones that are very clearly, that the media has not reported any of the stuff that is outside the purview of the Death Star bill. But all regulations having to do with fire safety, determined by your counties and cities, are completely off the table and outside the purview of this, okay? All health issues, I guess, except if you can somehow tie them back into one of those enumerated codes, health related, like, tall weeds, having stagnant water, the issues that you associated, those type of health issues, things having to do with food sales and permitting, outside, health issues, fire safety, health, and zoning. Those are the ones that are out. And then this one adds one more. It says, any issue having to do with animal welfare, outside the parameter of this bill. Now, the consequences for violating this are that it allows for a plaintiff to bring a lawsuit, it can also be a trade association. Big shocker, because a lot of this has to do with business-related interests. And they can seek declaratory and injunctive relief. They can seek the cost. There are rules that say that you have to give the local government 3 months' notice that you're going to bring the lawsuit before you bring the lawsuit. And additionally, this is the one that really got the attention. I mean, if you want to know what my constituents wanted to know about, a big shocker. What do you think your municipal judges wanted to know? Can we get sued over this? What happens if the city attorney brings an ordinance violation that's subject to this? Am I going to get sued for this? Do I need to quit? Is now a good time for me to retire? And I said, no, you've got judicial immunity, is what I've said to them. You've got judicial immunity. Your city council members, your county commissioners, they don't, okay? This very clearly says you will have no immunity defense if you violate it. Now, one of the things that I saw get tacked onto the bill is if you wrongfully bring one of these lawsuits, TML, I guess, was successful, Texas Municipal League was successful in putting provision in that says you will be on the hook for all of our lawyers' fees if you lose this lawsuit. So, to answer your question, I don't think issues about traveling are within the purview of this. And I do think that I understand the sensationalism of calling something a Death Star bill, but I will tell you the Death Star blew up Alderaan. There was no Alderaan left. There was no fire safety, health, zoning, or animal regulations left on poor Alderaan because the planet was destroyed, my Star Wars friends. Okay? But I'm telling you that in this case, all of those ordinances are fair game. All those ordinances are still in place and are outside the purview of that.
Well, see, that our last question was to be kind of what is still left, and I think he actually answered that very well. And again, if you go in, Texas Tribune has done a beautiful job of of looking at the land use, labor, environment, public health. You know, the 4 main areas that this does. There are 6, but there's a whole lot left because we have those state codes. But we're gonna talk a little bit about how can we advocate locally, but I want to give a warm round of applause for a fabulous presentation.
I'm going to take a picture now. Make sure you all begin smiling. Here we go. All right, your turn. Oh, you got to smile too. Hey, guy over there with the camera. You also. Come on in. Come on in. Here we go. Photo bomb. You can do it. 3, 2, 1. Here we go now. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to talk. You hang up here with us a minute. if
Okay.
you'd like to.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about how can we advocate locally. Okay? And there's a couple of things I want you guys to think about. And the league, we are going to be communicating with you about this, but think about local advocacy. Just on some of the things we touched on is who, what, where, and when. Who is your city council, your county commissioners, Bruce Elfont in the back? Who do you want to talk to and what? What local topic do you really care about? Okay? What is your hot button? What is something that you think your grandchildren need in this city or in this county? And then where is it going to be? Are you going to advocate email or in person? Every one of your leaders that are elected and appointed have office hours that you can go and see them. And then when? And whether it be to testify, whether it be committee, whether it be time to write a letter. So these are some of the things that we want, as a league, we would like you to be thinking about, things that we're going to be working on. And then there's some examples, okay? There's the Zilker plan, there's the city manager hiring, road, sidewalks, transportation, zoning, the AISD, and the TEA. This affects all of our children, it affects all of our future leaders. All of us were in elementary school at one time. So what the TEA is doing right now affects all of our futures. So there is a paper that says make a voting plan on your table, little pieces of paper. On the back, what we would like for you to do is jot down something that you've thought about today, some topic, all right? And I want you to jot down a topic. The first thing, don't think about this too hard. I want you to write down just now what's come to your mind. Is it trash? Is it roads? Is it the Zilker plan? Is it fire? Is it EMS? Is it the police? Is it our contracts? Is it the unions? What is it? Jot down something that's come to your mind today. Because then we have in the room, Joanne Richards. Where's Joanne Richards? Stand up, Joanne. All right, Joanne is our Vice President of Community and Policy, okay? She wants to know what's on your little pieces of paper. Don't throw them away. Either share them with her via email, go over to her. She's gonna be here in a little bit when we finish. But she wants to know, what topics are you writing down today? Because that's what forms what we do as a league. What do we advocate for? Do we want to watch this bill go through for the next few years into the courts? I think we do. I think this bill says a lot about local versus state. So I think this is something that some of you that may have been inspired today by what you've heard. This is something we need your eyes. It can't be the board of directors for organizations. It can't be the board members. It has to be all of us as league members determining what policies and what procedures and things that we want to do as a league. This doesn't belong to some entity. This belongs to us as league members. So this is what we'd like you to do. Jot that down, okay? Here's some action items. Share this topic with your neighbors. Talk about it with your neighbors. You're part of the league. Learn how to talk nonpartisan. Don't talk party, talk politics and policy. All right? You don't need to tell folks how to vote or how to think. Just talk general on the topics. Transparency in hiring. Okay? Talk a little bit about what that means. Not that you're pissed off about something, or that you think it ought to be done. Talk about what it means. What does transparency mean in our government? Then, as a group, okay, whether it be right after this, at your table, whether it be at a breakfast club, whether it be over coffee, whether it be at a league event. Again, you're going to get some communications. We're going to talk about that. But Joanne Richards is interested in what you're jotting down. as is Karen Nichols. Karen's in the back, okay? She's advocacy, what we speak for as a league. So Karen Richardson's also interested in this, and it forms our programs. All right? What happens next, Mary? And I think as Mary makes its way up, we're going to make our way off.
Well, Carol, I'm so glad you asked. We just happen to have a slide ready and prepared for you. After the kickoff today, we will be sending around basically a list of contacts, right? So you'll be able to see on the city council or the commissioners or who you might want to share your idea with. Depending on what it is you're concerned about, it might be best appropriately sent to lots of different places. But we will help you figure that out. And so, look around the next slide, is keep in mind one very important thing. We are all league members here today, and if not, we've got someone who can help you with that. But remember, this is your idea. This is your thought. This is your perspective. You are not speaking on behalf of the league. You are speaking on behalf of yourself. The process that Carol mentioned earlier is actually how we develop league policy. And that's what the two folks who were introduced will help lead moving forward. So if you have an area or a topic that you're concerned about and you want the league to examine it, to possibly formally adopt a position that then can be promoted as a league policy, that's the way we go about it. This is how it starts. It's all very grassroots. So if you've got an idea like that, Joanne and Karen will be happy to help you with that, and we will move forward on working and putting that all together. But as it stands right now, what we're hoping to do is just help you make your individual voice heard, to empower you to make sure your elected officials know what's important to you and how you stand on that. When you are doing that, I'm going to remind everybody about this lovely, colorful bingo card. Everyone put their name on it. Yes, we did. If you have bingo, please take it back to the table next to Karen, back at the membership table, and turn it in, because we are going to be doing a drawing here in a few minutes for prizes. So, what's up next? These are our next membership events. We've already got the dates on the calendar, so you can put it on yours. Plan in advance. Make sure you put little asterisks and stars all around these dates so you'll be available to attend with us. We'll have our new member holiday brunch on December 16th. That's a very casual event where we all eat a lot of breakfast tacos and donuts and hear about what's going on with the league, so highly recommend. We'll have our fundraiser, Defending Democracy, and this is going to be really fun and different this year. In the past, we've always done something similar to this, where we put together a room full of people and listen to other people talk. And as great as that is, we are going to take a break from that this year. We are really focusing on finding perhaps a movie that is right within the wheelhouse of advocacy and government, and we are partnering with the Alamo Draft House to do so. So we're really hoping that y'all will be interested in that, but that will be our fundraiser this year. The spring event is the Friends and Family Spring Festival. We are really hoping that people will get the next generation involved. So this is the space and time, if you haven't already, to bring your kids, to bring your grandkids, to bring your nieces and your nephews, or just some random kid off the street. As long as you get their parents' permission, they're totally fine with it, right? Bring anyone who you think could learn about the league to one of these events. I have to tell you, we had our inaugural one of these last year as organized by Kate. And if I had been a kid, and a little part of me almost did it, but I was wearing heels, so I didn't. There's a massive jumpy house, right? How fun is that? There's all kinds of carnival games, there's popcorn, there's face painting, there's all those things that kids love. This is also the event that we announced our Picture This winners at. And I'm going to do a side plug for that. This was also inaugural last year, but we have started a contest for all school-age kids, elementary, middle school, and high school, in both writing and the visual arts. related to whatever topic we put out. And I'll just go ahead and announce it because I have the microphone. The topic this year is democracy and community. So we are really looking forward to getting those entrants in, and the winners win an Amazon gift card, and we also produce their winning entries on t-shirts and mugs on our store. So we're really excited about that. Then finally, the annual meeting will be May 11th. Luckily for us, Jessica will be back for all of this, right? She will have her baby, she will be healthy, and she will be back, though likely a little tired. So get ready and be planned for that. Finally, get ready for the November election. These dates will always be on our website. So if you're ever curious or concerned that you might have missed a deadline or you want to know what's coming up, this is what's coming up. It always comes up super fast, right? Everyone in this room is at least 30. So you experience the, oh my God, is it already October? Yes, in fact, it almost is already October. And the last day to register to vote in our state is October 10th. So if you are hoping to do any work promoting voter registration, or you want to talk to your neighborhood group, or there's somebody new to the state that you want to ensure gets to vote, or you've got a child who's gone to college and you want to ensure their vote counts, you need to start working on that now because you're going to run out of time. It's October 10th for the November election. Then we're going to have early voting on October 23rd, so make sure you mark your calendars to do that. Honestly, the earlier you vote, the shorter the lines are. That's the secret tip that from me to you that you learned here today, right? Go when it's not lunchtime and go around October 23rd-ish, and you'll be in and out really, really super fast. But it's very important. This is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. It's always uplifting to me to see people go to protests after bad things happen or things that you don't agree with. But in all truth, this is the ultimate form of protest. If you don't like what's happening, vote. Because that's the only thing that's going to ultimately, at the end of the day, change the outcome. The 27th is the last day for ballot by mail. For those of you who are doing that, if you're new to the process or you didn't vote by mail last time, please know the process has changed. We spent all last year kind of talking about this. You might not remember all the things that we said. I will not take it personally. But please know that you've got to be very careful in how you apply for this, who helps you fill it out, how you turn it in, all the things, right? It's not exactly the same as it used to be. So if this is a process that you wish to avail yourself of, please start looking at it now. Please don't wait till the last day because your vote might not get counted in the way that you want it to. Finally, last day of early voting is the 3rd and the 7th is the election day. So one other event to let you know about, we partnered with Braver Angels to talk to you about some of the issues on the upcoming ballot, most of which relate to taxes, right? That's going to be the big 100-pound gorilla, 100-pound, that's not a very big gorilla, 500-pound gorilla in the room is going to be taxes. So we are doing this event at the Baker Center, which is where our offices are over there near Watt and 45th with Braver Angels. So if you're interested in that category, please come on out. We'll be going over the amendments 2, 3, and 4 on the ballot. Finally, we will always have our voter's guide and Vote 411, where we try to put it into regular English, what the ballot is going to say. We'll give you the actual language, of course, but then we'll say it without all the wherefores. So watch for that. All right, how can I get involved? Well, I'm so glad you asked. We have 4 opportunities up here to talk to you about. Obviously, the most obvious of these is to register with voter services. If you want to help register voters, or you want to talk to high schoolers about voting, you don't have to create this stuff in the back. She's waving, everyone, look, go talk to that table back there. They are happy to help you with this. The best news about all of this is you don't have to create any of this from scratch. All the materials have already been created for you. It's really, truly a matter of showing up. So we would love to have you. We can always use more people to do these things. If you want to talk about advocacy, we've already introduced those folks, but again, Karen and Joanne, we would love to have you on that. These are the other things. If you want to, if you're like, wow, that event was so awesome, but I could make it even awesomer, which by the way is a word, please join our organization committee. We would love to have you. We're always looking for new events, new ideas. As I said, the Friends and Family Festival didn't happen until last year. So we can always improve and change and make things more accessible and more exciting and more interesting. So please join us if that type of work interests you. Communications, I think you've all seen Grace, which I'm just going to call the picture bunny from here on out, because she was fabulous. She was everywhere. She was here, she was here, she was here, very fast. If you've got ideas on communications and you want to help us get the word out in the screaming maelstrom that is all of social media today, when you want to get your message out, it can be challenging. So if you want to help us with that, Grace is the woman to talk to. She's in the back at the table with the flag. And then finally, if you've got a special skill, finances, database management, we can use you as well. Yes, ma'am.
Speakers? Spanish speakers? Or
Oh,
any
yes.
full language?
If you speak any language other than English, we want to talk to you because that is always challenging. We want to be heard by as many people as possible, which means that we need to go where they are. We need to be in the locations that they live, and we need to speak the language that they speak. Sadly, I can't say much other than where is the bathroom. So if you are beyond me in your literacy, which most of you should be, please talk to the folks at the back. We absolutely need to get these messages out there. And then along with finance, database, IT, Angie in the back is our treasurer. We always need folks to serve on the audit committee and things like